Welcome, Guillaume and Vanessa.
Hola, buenas tardes a...
Oh,
Sorry, what's that?
we're all set. Thank you again.
Okay. Well, I start over. Hola, buenas tardes a todas y todos. My name is Guillaume Keynes. I'm the director and CEO of the Sorry, can I do it again?
Sure, you can restart at any time.
Yeah, it's absurd. When it's not live, when I'm not focused.
No problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Hola, buenas tardes a todas y todos. My name is Guillaume Keynes. I'm the director and CEO of the Hispanic Society Museum and Library, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you, friends of the Hispanic Society, to Las Tertulias de Arte Hispano, or Hispanic Art Gatherings. I would like to thank our members who have joined us monthly for over a year, and welcome all those who are new members and new friends of the museum and watching their first Tertulia with us this evening. These conversations take place on the first Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m. If you are not a member yet, please do consider joining by going to our website, hispanicsociety.org, and search for membership under support. Usually these events are live, but as we are coordinating our efforts from various time zones and during the summer holidays, this month's event has been pre-recorded. Today, I have the great pleasure of welcoming our very own Vanessa Pintado, Assistant Curator of Manuscripts and Rare Books. She is sharing with us a recent research on the late 15th century literary work, the Celestina of Burgos, 1499, revisiting Basilea's printer's device. This work, produced in the city of Burgos, Spain, is considered one of the greatest works of the Spanish literature and is often understood as marking a transition from medieval to Renaissance literary traditions. Vanessa presented the first part of her research last year, so this talk is an extension and continuation of her previously shared work. Good evening, Vanessa. Few words about you. Ms. Pintado has been working at the Hispanic Society for almost 13 years. She served as assistant librarian and recently as assistant curator in the Department of Manuscripts and Rare Books. Her main focus of study has been an early edition of La Celestina held at the Hispanic Society Museum and Library. She has presented papers about her research in several conferences held in San Francisco, Mexico, and Buenos Aires. Before starting to work at the Hispanic Society, Ms. Pintado worked at the Morgan Museum and Library as reading room assistant for over 10 years. She holds a bachelor's degree in English literature from Baruch College, a master's degree in Spanish literature from Hunter College, and an MPhil in Hispanic and Luso-Brazilian literatures and languages from the Graduate Center of CUNY, City University of New York. After Vanessa's presentation, we will have a brief conversation, and I invite you to submit questions and comments in the comment section of the video. We are recorded, but we will try to comment back and answer everyone within the next few days. Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Vanessa, for sharing your knowledge about the Celestina tonight with us. The screen is yours.
To our members attending tonight's Tertulia. It is a pleasure to be here and present some aspects of my latest research on one of the earliest editions of La Celestina held in the collection of the Hispanic Society Museum and Library since 1909. For approximately the last 180 years, critics have believed that the 1499 edition of La Celestina printed in Burgos was really published at a later date, and have argued that Fadrique de Basilea's printer's device was either a facsimile or a photographic reproduction. This belief, repeated by generations of scholars, bibliographers, and booksellers, led many prominent professors and scholars specialized in the history of the book to conclude that the Burgos edition of La Celestina was printed later than 1499, perhaps as late as 1502, and should not be considered the earliest printed edition of the work. It was only after I saw the edition briefly when I was a graduate student here at the Hispanic Society that I became interested in exploring this problem further. Having worked for many years at the Pierpont Morgan Library, now the Morgan Library and Museum, I became even more interested in the Burgos edition of La Celestina when I learned that this copy had been in the collection of J.P. Morgan in the early 1900s. J.P. Morgan lent the book to Archer Huntington, founder of the Hispanic Society, and the original idea was to make a facsimile edition of the book. Subsequently, after the completion of the facsimile, after Huntington returned the original to Morgan's house, Morgan decided to give the precious incunable as a gift to Huntington. So I'm going to stop for a moment and show you the slides. I calculated the 180 years following the first time that we have notice of the Celestina of Burgos in the Biblioteca Heberiana. It's a catalog of the library of the late Richard Heber. This ninth part was published in 1836, and as you see, it says of the late Richard Heber. The next description of the item, and this is a very important description because it's the first description we read about this book. The number is 650, Celestina, Tragicomedia Cristo e Melibea. This copy commences on A1 without any title. It is printed in a fine character with woodcuts and concludes with the device of Fadrique de Basilea and the date of 1499. Then it goes on to describe the binding, green Morocco leather with joints. At the time, it was sold, I think it was £2 and 2 shillings. So this is the first description we have of this edition in 1836. Bibliographers did not list Celestina of Burgos before in a list of the bibliographers of the time. So talking about things, I wanted to briefly show you what bindings looked like in the 16th century, a little bit after the Celestina of Burgos was published in 14. So we think we had like this one in not decked and with probably the title on the spine. This would be the easiest way to bind books when people bought the books from the printer or the bookseller. They would be most be responsible for buying the book. This is the binding that it has now, the Celestina. This binding was done in 1869. By the French. We believe that Achille Seyer, a book collector, asked the binder to do a very decorated binding. I think he thought this book was important, as many of the other ones he collected. Quickly, here are some ex libris, person whom Pierre von Morgan bought, Richard Bennett's whole collection in 1902. And then this is Huntington's ex libris. So this is part of how I know the history of the provenance of the book. So when he gave the book to Huntington, he sent it and he put an inscription, Archer M. Huntington, with kind regards, J.P. Morgan. And in a letter, he sent this by messenger. This letter says so in January 15, 1909. So since then, this book has been part of the collection of Huntington and of the Hispanic Society. A very interesting and I think moving part of there is when J.P. Morgan says that I have felt that the true place of the original rather than the reprint or facsimile was in your collection, where it will form a link in that marvelous chain of Spanish literature which you are forming. So the Celestina has become part of the collection, part of the family, and of a world-renowned collection. When I first examined, I took for granted the printer's device was a facsimile. This is what survives as the title page. We assumed there was a title page because the first signature, which is gathering of folios, has only 7 folios, and they should be 8. We can only, propose that there was another leaf that either had the title and a woodcut or just the title. Many people think it woodcut because this edition is illustrated. Has 16 illustrations and one more which is repeat. Last time I showed a little bit more woodcuts, but now I want to just concentrate on the last leaf and the careful observation of particularly the last folio. I did not see immediate evidence. I believe the printer's device was a reproduction. It was paper, as some studies suggest. Research, which seemed like I wanted to sleeve production, nor a facsimile made by a skillful. In any case, if the leaf was a reproduction, the reproduction was, I thought, book was bound on the time of the at the beginning, that was 1836 to 1837, or in
Hi, Vanessa. Can I just interrupt you quickly? Sorry, your connection is going in and out. Vanessa?
Yes.
Your connection is going in and out. Are you able to repeat that last section?
Yes.
Thank you.
From Christina, from where?
If you could go back maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this is the first leaf present in the book. We assume that there's a leaf missing the title page. We assume this because usually the first gathering of a book has 8 leaves. This is a quarto book, so that means that it would have 8 leaves of 6 in the first gathering. Many people have spoken about a possible leaf with just the title of, or that includes the title and a woodcut. Many people have spoken about what kind of woodcut this could be, but it is something that have any evidence about, and it's hard to decide or to assume what this first leaf was. To concentrate now on the last leaf where the printer's device is the end of the book. When I first examined the book, I took for granted the printer's device was a facsimile. However, careful observation of the book, particularly the last folio, I didn't see any evidence to believe this device was a reproduction or that it was based on a studies suggest. This is when I started my research, which seemed like a puzzle that to demonstrate the last leaf is not a metaphor. In any case, if the leaf was a reproduction was before the book was bound on the last binding time of the 1936-7. After years of research concerning the edition, several times measuring the size of the paper, illustrations, text blocks, and the printer's device, and in collaboration with experts in printed books and paper from the Morgan Library, I believe the printer's device on the last leaf of La Celestina is genuine. which would indicate that the device was on an inserted leaf that is the same as the rest of the book, with being that the on this last page, we're going to see in the next slide, is thinner, possibly due to the fact that it has been pasted. It has been treated and pasted. I believe that the last page containing Basilea's device was at some time or another pasted onto another piece of paper or flyleaf. This evidence might explain that when Jean-Jacques Brunet consulted the Burgos edition of La Celestina, he described in the second time there was a new edition of his manual, he saw the last page pasted, transferred, or the word he uses, reporté, to a paper that had a 1795 watermark. I just want to show, this is the last leaf. This is how the actual book looks. This is how the actual leaf looks. So you can see that this last leaf is not pasted any other paper. I also wanted to comment that to begin with, is a thin paper. How do we know that? Here on this leaf, the verso of this leaf, you can see through the text from the previous page. So that this one is thin is not evidence to think that it is a different paper from the rest. So John Bidwell, curator of printed books and bindings and paper historian at the Morgan Library, once explained to me that English paper makers often included dates in their watermarks. This observation is very significant because the Celestina, at the time of the Heber sale, did have an English green Morocco leather binding. This English flyleaf with the 1795 date may well explain some of the descriptions of the Burgos edition that were published and discussed in manuals and catalogs of the 19th and 20th century. I think it can be argued that when Chambol-Duroux prepared the Burgos edition to rebind it, he had to remove the English binding, and he probably removed or separated the English paper with the 1795 watermark from the last leaf, which contained the printer's device. As a result of this process of separation or of splitting the two pages glued together, that is to say, the last leaf and the end paper, the last page has suffered and has been affected. You can see through more clearly here, and there are even traces of, brush brush strokes, etc. In fact, it has a thinner consistency to the touch. At first glance, it may look like the device has been printed on a different paper from that of the rest of the book. So I had promised in the previous presentation last year that I would show an example. And this is my example. I have several slides. And here you can see an example where a last leaf of the text or of the book is pasted into the end leaf. These are the end leaves that are of marble paper. So something like this is what I think happened to the last leaf of the Celestina. Here it is more clear that both were pasted together and they cannot be separated. This is an example from our collection. A little later in date, but it is a great example of what I believe happened. And here you can see through the light, and if you look at it, you might not know that these are two different leaves, or that you might not realize that, yes, that one of them is earlier and one of them is later. The members, this was my second part, and here is the last leaf, and I believe it is original and that there's no evidence that this is a falsified or facsimile printers.
Well, thank you so much, Vanessa, for this wonderful tertulia. We are thrilled our community and supporters have enjoyed this. Something weird happened. Do you see me?
Yes, we can still see you.
Okay, it's weird. It's like I've been. Okay, let me. What's happening today? So do you see me?
Yes.
Yes, and we can.
Sorry, zoom close and open up again. Sorry. So where was I? Well, I started overthinking you. So thank you so much, Vanessa, for this fascinating presentation. I have a couple of questions for you. One would be, how did you conduct your research? I mean, what were the different steps, phases, and emotions, perhaps, that you experienced doing the research?
Yes, as I mentioned, the emotion was, it was excitement because the book had belonged to JP Morgan first, and second, because it was a puzzle, it was detective work. I looked at many different early editions, including early editions of Celestina. I went to France, the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, and saw a Seville edition of 1501. And also I looked at several editions of Fadrique de Basilea, and earlier and later. Some of them have examples of this same printer's device. And so I studied, measured everything, compared everything. I was working with a professor from the Graduate Center, and he had read a lot of the articles and books about this problem, and we had discussed it, and it was very exciting. So I wanted to show my gut feeling, if I could say that, was that I didn't see any evidence. After so many years looking at rare books, I did not see where everybody else saw a copy or a reproduction. So I tried to cover everything that had been said about the problem.
So how many Celestinas did you consult in total?
Oh, well, absolutely so many. The Hispanic has about 41. I didn't look at all of those because they don't, some of them are later, but I consulted the one in Paris and several ones in the Biblioteca Nacional de España. I also went to Puerto Rico, to La Casa del Libro, to try to consult some Basilea books, but that was that didn't happen. They were in a vault, so I could not see them. So there, you know, it took years, but there's a lot of material, and there's also lots of material that have not been discussed by most critics. So I saw everything I could in the United States, at the Hispanic, the Morgan Library, Paris, and Spain.
And I guess they're all very important and rare, but to your view, what version is the most precious one?
The most precious one, by definition, for everybody, was the 1499 edition of the Burgos edition, because it was considered the princeps in the 19th century. Some people, of course, don't think it is the princeps, and I also agree. We assume that a printed book with illustrations comes after a printed book without illustrations, especially in the 15th century, where the printing, you know, it wasn't starting in 1499, but many of the German printers had gone to Spain, and we assumed that they would not invest in, you know, ordering woodcuts if they didn't know if they were going to sell the book.
Right. But if it's not the princeps, is it the oldest?
Yes, it is considered. It is considered by Fouché del Bosque in 1902, by Di Camillo, by me, and by John O'Neill, to be the earliest. The earliest edition. Many people have compared it to the 1500 edition and the 1501, and most people agree it is the earliest text that survives.
And how many copies of this earliest edition?
There's, of the Burgos edition, actually, of all of them, these are unique copies. They have survived only in one copy and outside of Spain. So it's the Burgos edition 1499, the one from Toledo, printed by Hagenbach in 1500, and the one printed by Stanislao Polono in 1501 in Seville. So there's only one copy of each of these different editions.
That makes them very, very special indeed. And I was very interested in what you shared with us about the relationship between Arthur Huntington and J.P. Morgan. I mean, what can you tell us about them? I mean, they were great rare book collectors,
Yes.
and what, I mean, were they friends or just acquaintances?
I think they were more than acquaintances. They had business together in one of the banks. I think it was Morgan Harges. There's some evidence to that. And, so they had business together and they were all wealthy people who got together to promote museums, libraries, gardens, etc. They, as you said, had very special collections. Morgan and Huntington have, of very important collections in the world. So they were, I wouldn't say they were very good friends, but they knew each other for a long time.
And they were competitors, I guess, because they were buying in the same market.
Yes, but JP Morgan was focused on buying everything that had to do with uh, humans and writing. So his focus was not one culture, one country. His focus was worldwide, and that's the difference. And Huntington's focus was, as we know, Spain, Portugal, Philippines, and other places where Portuguese and Spanish were spoken.
Absolutely. And well, it is a remarkable and remarkably generous gesture that he gave his own copy, so rare, to the Hispanic Society Museum and Library. And decades, century after, we're still very grateful that he did so. And if other listening to this Tertulia are interested in asking some questions, please let them in the comment section of the video, and we will come back to you in the next few days. I'm sure we all enjoyed very much your lecture, Vanessa. Thank you again, and thank you to our members for this wonderful moment tonight. We are thrilled our community and supporters continue to stay involved with the museum, and as a reminder, we have right now 2 wonderful exhibitions open at the moment at the Hispanic Society. One is In the Heights, From University to Silver Screen. It's a photographic exhibition open in the East Building Gallery. And the second one is Latinx Diaspora, Stories from Upper Manhattan, open on the Broadway terrace outside. Our next Tertulia will happen on Tuesday, September the 7th. Dr. Marcus Berg, Senior Curator of Paintings, Drawings and Metalwork, will discuss the work of Puerto Rican artist Jose Campeche y Jordan. And additionally, I'd like to mention something to you all, as your appetite for rare books has been whetted. We're going to have a very important exhibition in the fall in New York at the Grolier Club, showcasing the most important treasures from the Hispanic Society libraries. So the show at the Grolier Club will run from September the 28th to December the 18th. So don't miss the show. It worth a trip to New York if you're not living in New York, and you will certainly be amazed by the incredible collection that Archer Huntington and his successors gathered at the Hispanic Society Museum and Library. And Vanessa is one of the keepers of this, steward of this incredible collection. So thank you so much, Vanessa, again, for sharing your knowledge. It was the second part of your research. We are looking forward to hearing the third part of your research very, very soon, hopefully. Well, thank you again. Thank everyone, and have all a very good night.
Thank you.
Okay. The connection was very